Hi, it's Louise at Spiral Bright Insight. It is Friday, the 23rd of May, and I'm here with an energy check-in. Now, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I know there have been quite a few new subscribers recently, so I'm really pleased that you are here, and I hope you enjoy the content that I have got to share with you. And just as a heads up, I will be recording my new moon in Gemini video after I have done this one, so please keep an eye out for that. That is coming very, very soon. But yeah, I just wanted to really pop on and share a little bit about some of the astrology that we are working with right now, what is coming up over the next couple of days, and really check in and share what has been coming up for me, because it has been really intense. Now we're building up to the new moon in Gemini now, so we are coming to the end of the influence of the full moon in Scorpio, which we have been working with over the past days and weeks. And, you know, that was intense. That really was shining a light on a lot of what was hidden, deeply emotional. And yeah, certainly a lot of stuff has come up for me in that period. And now, as I speak, there's a lot going on. We are literally in the final hours of Saturn in Pisces. Saturn is going to move into Aries in the early hours of Sunday morning for us in the UK. So we're literally in the last gasp. Saturn at the very final degree of the zodiac, the anoretic degree, the crisis degree. We've also got today, the sun is opposite it's trine, the Super Galactic Centre. So the sun at 2 degrees of Gemini is in trine to the Super Galactic Centre. So that is adding some weight, some cosmic weight to the chart and to the layout there, to the aspects and the energies. Mercury is going to meet up with Uranus, and that is tomorrow in Taurus at 27 degrees of Taurus. And that is going to create a trine with the Sphinx, which is one of the asteroids that I work with, and also square Alphard in Hydra. So there's definitely something to look at there. We also have the sun coming into a trine with Pluto tomorrow. So that will kind of form the grand air trine with the Super Galactic Centre as well. So it will be exact tomorrow, but it's very, very relevant and influential right now as I film this video. And then, you know, as we move beyond, where are we? Chiron is going to meet with Eris in an exact conjunction on the 27th of May, which is the same day that we have the new moon. And the day before, the 26th, we've got Mercury moving into Gemini. So there is a lot going on. You know, we're in Gemini season. Everything is shifting. Strong mutable air energy. Nothing is sort of set in stone at the moment. You know, the landscapes are changing by the minute. Everything feels really quick. You know, Gemini's speed, Gemini's information, Gemini's the mind. It will affect our nervous system. There's a lot of information coming in. There's a lot of energy. You know, air energy is light. There is a lot of light and there is a lot of change. You know, mutable energy, it's not about standing still. It is about shifting ultimately so that we can have, you know, a new understanding and we can start to write a new story. And Gemini is also the voice, so there is a real opportunity for us to start to use our voice at this time as well. And I will go into more of that when I do my new moon video. But as for today, you know, the fact that we're on the 23rd of May, the 2 and the 3 in the date, and the day adds up to 5. So we've got the double 5 energy again, and I've talked about that recently, but this is the energy of change. You know, this is the tipping point. This is the midpoint, the number 5, where we can see everything. We can see where we've come from and we can see where we are going to an extent. But, you know, anything can change. Anything is possible when we're working with the 5. And it's also the number of exploration, of adventure, of excitement, of optimism. So again, that is really, you know, that's all coming up for us as well. But let's just sort of bring a little bit of focus into some of these sort of more intense energies. And I think, the biggest one really is Saturn at 29 degrees of Pisces. Now, I've talked about Saturn moving into Aries and what that is likely to bring. Thank you so much for everybody who watched that video, and particularly, if you commented as well. But before that happens this weekend, which is a big deal, we are at the final degree. And, this is the point where everything is dissolving. Saturn at the final degree is, just everything is collapsing. So if you feel that you are in free fall, that everything that perhaps you relied on or that gave you structure and form and a foundation and a base in your life is being removed, and it may be subtle, but it may be really, really intense and quite brutal as well. Again, it is the transit, it is the energy, and it is something that for many of us, or for most of us, we have to go through, we have to experience it. And when you feel as if everything is disappearing, everything is falling away, people perhaps that were a big part of your life suddenly aren't there anymore. And, I don't know, just, systems that perhaps you have always relied on simply aren't kind of giving you what you need anymore. And that can be sort of, from a collective perspective, but also an individual. Then it is because we are at this final degree, and this is about endings and where we are going as Saturn moves into Aries and we start to build something new. We cannot take with us what is no longer serving us. And often, we can be held back, we can be held down by something or someone, and we weren't even aware of it. But Saturn at this point is making sure that all of that is removed. And this may be stuff that is hidden in the subconscious as well, because Pisces, can be very ethereal, very surreal. In our dreams, illusions obviously come under Pisces, but also subconscious secrets, the soul, what we might not have been able to see or sort of touch or reach, hold on to tangibly, physically, that is also going. So I would just say, I don't think anybody is immune. Obviously, it's going to affect all of us, very differently, because we all have our own path, we all have our own story, we all have our individual blueprint. But if you are going through this kind of time when things are disappearing, where you are losing things, and it creates panic because we're so used to wanting and needing to know what is happening and who we've got on our side and who are walking with us, and when all that starts to disappear and go, it's scary, it's destabilizing, it will create panic, it will create fear, it will create a lot of grief, and huge amounts of grief have been coming up for me this week. I have been going through some pretty, what I consider to be deep and significant stuff this week, which I'm not going to go into, but I just want to say that, for many of us, we're going to have our safety blanket removed. Energy, people, situations, environments that perhaps we have relied on, that we perhaps, were a comfort zone, were a safety blanket, and we didn't even know. Again, if it's not, part of our path forward, and if it's not really supporting us, and it's not a genuine, true foundation, it is going, and this is such a karmic time. So there are huge karmic contracts coming to an end, being completed, and again, this is not easy. So I just want to kind of I don't know if reassure is the right word, but this is a transit. This is part of what we came here to do. This is part of the plan, of the grand design, and it's uncomfortable. It is triggering grief. It is triggering so many different emotions. But again, it is about being able to sit with those emotions, with those feelings. Don't try and escape from them. Don't try and numb them out. Don't try and reject them or deny them or repress them. Just allow it to come through. And there's going to be moments where it feels overwhelming and you don't quite know what to do, how to handle it, what to even think. But with this mutable energy, and with obviously Pisces and Gemini, trust and know that everything is shifting. Nothing is permanent. This is very much a karmic restructuring, and there is not a lot that we can really do to control it. At the final degrees of Pisces, there is no control. There is no structure. Form is dissolving. So it's just about moving through it, being with it, not trying to understand it, not trying to, come up with a rationale or a reason. Again, South Node in Virgo, we can't rely on that anymore. We can't rely on the mind and an explanation. We just have to feel everything, have compassion, particularly for the self. If there are situations, people that need our forgiveness, then absolutely, that may be coming up too. But remember that the most important person that we will ever need to forgive is ourselves. So if you've kind of started to lose track or sight or knowledge, understanding of who you are, not what you know, again, this is where we're at. But it's not going to go on forever. And it's almost like we have to let go of everything to be able to transform into the new version. And the 5-5 energy is supporting that. And again, so it's just like, okay, just got to surrender, just got to go with it. So that's going on. And of course, what is really helpful, I would say, is that Saturn is conjunct Chiron in Pegasus. So this is the winged horse, this is the way shower. This is magical energy, multidimensional energy. And this is really helping us to break free from the chains that have bound us. And again, often we don't even know that the chains are there, but this is an energy of freedom, of liberation, of being able to fly high and to feel that lightness and that excitement, and also an energy of faith and trust, because at this point we're having to let go of everything. We do not know what is going to come in to replace that. And if something that you have relied on that has been a real crux, something really solid, something that you had faith in, perhaps, if suddenly that is removed, there can be a feeling of like, oh, but what do I do now? There's a massive gaping hole, but you've got to kind of think, and again, this is probably for me more than anybody else, that emptiness, that space that is created by that thing, that person removing themselves, leaving, however the scenario is presenting, the gaping void and hole that is left it's full of potential, and it's something that can be filled, but you have to sit with the void first before whatever is coming to fill it can present itself and can come in. So again, and that sitting in the void, that emptiness, is scary because you feel on your own. It can feel dark. There can be a lot of fear and a real kind of sense of disorientation, loss, because you don't quite know which way to turn and which way to go. It is by coming in to that at that point and sitting in the stillness, in the emptiness, in the void, that you can access the power, and the insight will come, and whatever is coming in will find its way, but we're not quite there yet. We need to go over this. It is like a massive threshold that we are moving over and through as Saturn prepares to step into 0 degrees of Aries. So that's kind of the biggie. The Sun trine, the Super Galactic Centre, is also really huge because the Sun in Gemini is really kind of shining a light on our minds, on information, our mindset, our perception, our perspective, the stories that we tell. So it is going to become a lot more obvious, I think, over the coming sort of weeks as the Sun moves through Gemini. It's going to become more obvious where perhaps we're creating stories in our mind that are not true. So, our minds are very sophisticated. We can create all sorts of scenarios, themes, stories, ideas, beliefs in the head that we then believe to be true, even when they're not. And that may actually be highlighted over the coming weeks. But with the Super Galactic Centre in a trine and with Pluto, this is very much sort of destroyer creator energy, which fits in with the Saturn at the final degree, also with Neptune at sort of in the early degrees of Aries as well. Something has to be removed, be released, come to an end, experience a death of sorts, an energetic death or a physical death, in order for the new to come in. And with the Super Galactic Centre, this is a powerful cosmic force. This is black hole energy, pulling, 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 stretching us towards something that is so far from the truth of who we are that we have no alternative but to come back to the self, because we are going to feel like we might have been looking for something outside of the self. We might have looked for validation or even to really know ourselves through someone else. But the Super Galactic Centre really wants us to see the truth of what that looks like, the truth of what we are doing and the reality of that. And it reminds us that any attempt to seek validation or to seek the truth or fulfillment or knowledge or understanding or even seeing the self through other people is not going to work, because the only way we can really understand the self and validate the self and fulfill the self is through coming back to the self. So any attempt to kind of look beyond, yes, it might work for a while, but it ultimately is not going to work. It will be blocked and there will be disappointment and there will be a death of some description. And that is how the Super Galactic Centre works. So this is very much a reinvention of the self, which Saturn is supporting, which Neptune is supporting. The Sun in Gemini is bringing in new information, a new understanding, another side of the story that perhaps you just could not see before. Suddenly there it is, the different story. And it helps because I have said there's no point trying to understand and reason, but there is new information coming in that is going to bring something to light that just was hidden before. And really, the Super Galactic Centre ultimately wants you, me, each of us to realise and remember that the power that we are seeking, what we are seeking, the void that we are trying to fill, is actually something that lies within us. And anything that you try to attach to outside of yourself is not going to be there permanently, because everything ultimately will be destroyed, because that is the nature of the universe and the reality that we live in. So with Pluto here as well in a trine, this is supportive. The universe is on your side. The universe is always on your side, but this is a lesson that, yes, it may be painful, but actually it's creating growth and there will be flow and that it will come easily. And I think with Gemini energy as well, the information is coming through really quickly. So even if there is pain or challenge or grief, loss, bereavement, or whatever it is that you're coming up against, the information is coming really quickly to help you perhaps understand a bit more about why. And of course, don't forget, we have had the Sun move over Sedna very recently. So again, that is a whole other story in itself. But there's definitely this sense of, having to let go of something that we have relied on, something that perhaps we've looked up to, something that we have perhaps thought would always be there. This is Sedna sort of being cut off by her father in a very shocking and dramatic and traumatic way, and having to let go. But instead of that being the end, and sometimes it does feel, if we've lost something, it does feel like the end, because we just think, what do we do now? But as with Sedna, this is an opportunity to transform and to become more empowered. And we might not know what it is that we're going to transform into quite yet, but it is about having faith and the trust that the new version of the self is just going to be so much better, so much more powerful, so much more sovereign, and so much more aligned with who we were meant to be. Because often, and again, the Super Galactic Centre, this is also in a trine to Sedna, and this is an ongoing trine. The Super Galactic Centre, there can be codependency, because it's Libra and that is the lower expression of Libra. But Super Galactic Centre is going to strip that away and teach us that actually, which is the message of Saturn and Aries, this is time to stand on our own feet, particularly if we have got misplaced loyalty, misplaced compassion, misplaced dependence on something. And this could be a structure, this could be an institution, this could be a habit, a routine. It doesn't have to be a person in particular, but anywhere where we are giving our power away and not seeing our own light, where we might be seeing our own light through someone else as a mirror, this is reminding us that actually the most important thing that we can do is see our own light and to own our own light. And that is when it can start to grow even brighter. So as we move forward into this weekend, as if that wasn't enough, Chiron conjunct Eris is going to feel, it's there now, but the exact conjunction will be on the 27th. This is wounding, this is pain. This is the wound of the identity, Chiron in Aries. And with Eris here, this is really potentially a painful truth or a wound perhaps being, triggered around any situations where perhaps, we haven't been able to stand in our truth, where we haven't been able to speak our voice, to speak our truth, to show up as who we are. Perhaps we've had that information suppressed or denied or hidden from us. Eris is going to expose that. So that could be quite challenging, and again, if there are systems that have wounded us or have been trying to suppress us or keep us on the fringe, marginalised, outcast, again, that is likely to be in the spotlight. And the whole point of the wound and the pain is to help us step into more of ourselves. So again, it is about feeling that emotion in all its raw state, being vulnerable, being scared potentially, but knowing that that is actually the source of your power. And if you have the ability to feel and to face and to sit with it rather than sort of trying to ignore it, deny it, suppress it, numb it, etc., then you can really gain the lesson and the power and the sovereignty, because this is Aries. There's some sort of truth that is being acknowledged, and it has to be expressed as well. And there may be anger, because Eris, can be very angry. This energy, she is the goddess of discord and strife. The goddess of discord and strife. So again, there may be heated energies, heated discussions, heated stories coming out through the news. But again, it is all designed to bring us back to more of who we are and our right to our own identity and our own truth. And then as Mercury moves into Gemini, following the sun, he's going to meet with Sedna just ahead of the new moon. Mercury is going to be a big part of the new moon chart. Information that has perhaps been sort of within the depths, below the surface, within the ocean, within the waters, could be coming up to light. So that is definitely a possibility, but also lots of information coming at us. Mercury and Gemini, it's going to be really hard to switch our minds off. We're potentially going to feel quite overwhelmed with the information, the ideas, the stories that are running through. So be mindful of that. But also, chopping and changing. And I think with Gemini, we may be called to take sides, but it is about realizing that, if you go too far one way, you can get lost. So try and stay the middle, keep the middle ground, try and see all the different points of view, even if there is a lot of noise. So this is, this weekend, it's a powerful one. There is a lot going on. We've got this massive shift, Saturn, the father time structure, just kind of that, the planet that holds everything together is having to let go of everything in order to be reborn. We've got this strong Gemini energy. We've got this strong cosmic energy. And of course, I forgot to mention, I did mention it earlier, but I'll just go back to it now. Mercury conjunct Uranus. So that is tomorrow. And again, this could be information coming through that is really destabilizing. Now, we had the Sun conjunct Uranus last weekend. And that definitely created some shockwaves, not necessarily in the way that, I was expecting personally, but it definitely rattled my foundation and my sort of safety and comfort zone. And Mercury coming through to meet with Uranus this weekend is potentially going to send some shockwaves in terms of information and understanding. So again, just be mindful of it, be ready. It might not show up in the way we think it's going to be, and that is so often the case. But with the trine to the Sphinx, again, it does feel like there's a lot of ancient wisdom coming through that we didn't have a right to know about before, but we do now, because we've got to the point where we can ask the right questions and we can give the right answer, because we have that level of awareness and that consciousness that perhaps just wasn't quite there before, but now it is. So this is going to be interesting. And of course, with the square to Alphard in Hydra, this for me is Kundalini, spiritual awakening energy. This is the serpent. This is shedding layers, releasing old versions of the self so we can step into our power, standing on our own, not being influenced or affected by what is going on, but staying true, staying in the heart center. Alphard is the lone star. This is the heart star. So understanding the prominence and the purpose and the power of the heart, but also the ability to release and shed and let go. And of course, with Saturn, again, it's just all so beautifully woven together, so complementary. We're in the year of the snake. We're in the number 9 year. We've got this really strong endings energy. And this is about awakening to who you are, what you value, what your worth is, how you value yourself, and what matters, what's important. Transformation is happening, and I'm going to say whether we're ready or not, we are ready. We have been ready for this for lifetimes, but now it's here, and there is a recognition at a soul level that this is exactly what we've been waiting for. Now it's here. It is scary because we've still got the human 3D perspective as well as the higher levels of consciousness. So just allow whatever is coming up, just allow it to happen. Trust and know that there is a bigger picture, there is a bigger design, and that, everything has a place and everything is playing out exactly as it was intended to, even if it's shocking, even if, things are happening that you just didn't see coming, and that, again, just sort of another star to bring in just really quickly, but with Saturn at 29 degrees of Pisces, it's in a square to Acumen in Scorpius, and this is the tail of the scorpion. So again, there could be something that happens that is a bit of a sting and it's painful, and again, it's going to trigger emotion, it's going to trigger grief, it's going to trigger pain, but it also unlocks and releases higher wisdom, higher understanding, knowledge, acumen that you need to be able to move forward. And it also gives you the resilience to withstand the pain, to withstand the challenge and perhaps the obstacle, and to see it not as an obstacle or as a challenge, but as a pathway, an opportunity to growth. So I'm going to leave it there. As I said, I will be back with my new moon video. I hope that what I've shared in this video has been useful. It's a lot of what is coming up for me, and I know from what I've shared before and the comments I've received that we are all connected and we are all going through similar stories, if not necessarily exactly the same, but the energies are very similar. So let me know if this has resonated, what might be coming up for you. I don't expect you to share your life story or anything personal, but if it is resonating, I think it helps for other people to read that. I know when I read other sort of, when I'm following other YouTube content providers and I read the comments, which I often do, it really helps to kind of see what other people are saying and thinking and feeling. And, as always, thank you so much for being here, for supporting me. Please like the video, share it if you feel called. I trust that the right people will be drawn to my content. If you want to be on my mailing list, you can sign up for that on my website, spiralbright.co.uk. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there. So thank you so much and sending lots of love.